Watercolor portraits can feel impossible when you're starting out. So today, as a thank you for your continuous support, I have created a full-length, real-time class where I will guide you step by step from the first pencil sketch to the final watercolor touches. You will learn how to sketch from a reference photo, choose and mix colors, build realistic skin tones, create natural shading, and bring your portrait to life with expression. So grab your art materials and let's paint together. Hello everyone! I want to paint the portrait today and I want to make it a bit different than the reference photo that I've chosen. This one I found on Unsplash. That's a website where you can find references that you can use for different projects. I like to go there and to a few others like Pexels or Pixabay to get some of my references that I use for tutorials. Not always, but I try my best. I was looking for a portrait that would not be so hard to paint today, but I could stylize it with color, and that has one level of difficulty, something that I did not paint on my channel all that frequently, and that's the facial expression. I will explain and try to do my best today in terms of how to draw this and how to paint with watercolor. I do not want the process to be overly long, but I will slow down for you to explain everything step by step. And drawing is a big part of the whole process of creating a portrait. And I know that all of us, including me, will want to skip to the painting part, but it's just not possible. We have to do the drawing as well. But we do not have to stick to 100% proportions because that would be very difficult for most of you, including myself. And now I want to show you all of the materials that I will be using today. Winsor & Newton professional cold press paper. This is 12 by 16 inches, or in centimeters it's 30 by 40. I like this paper, I've used it a lot. This is a new block that I opened today, and when I opened it, the texture, it seems to be different than it used to be. It has rougher texture than the previous blocks had. I even compared with the exact same block that I have here from last year. I will see how everything works on this paper and whether something's changed. This paper I like to use especially when I do work that requires a lot of colors, because color looks great on this one and it allows granulation to really shine. I like this paper. I also have these small sheets of watercolor paper cut just to do some color testing. I have 2 jars of water. Usually it's one for clean, the other one for dirty water. However, they get mixed up. I have sketching tools over here. There's just a mechanical pencil with 2B lead, and there's this one that I don't use on a watercolor paper, the Blackwing pencils. I like to use them a lot when I sketch, especially in sketchbooks, but they are harder to erase on a watercolor paper. I don't mind to show some sketch lines underneath the watercolor painting, but I don't want to risk that there's gonna be heavy graphite lines somewhere where it's not supposed to, because I need to correct my sketches. I'm never so precise as to do my sketch the first time I try. So this one will be for me explaining proportions on a separate paper, and I think the final sketch will be done with 2B lead a mechanical pencil. I have this precision eraser by Kohinoor. This is just an eraser for erasing some details. Harder eraser, this is dust free, the one that I always use and always link for you. That's the one that is very gentle to watercolor paper, but still I use it when I really want to get rid of the lines. The kneaded eraser is for softening the sketch, getting rid of excess graphite, for smudging on your paper. This one is also a watercolorist's must-have. Okay, so that's drawing tools. Now let's go over the brushes. I have like 4 groups of brushes here. The brushes that I paint with and the brushes that I use to clean the paint, which we have to do sometimes. So the main brushes that I paint with, and if I did not have any other brushes, I would probably just use these 2, and that's the Winsor & Newton round series 7 brushes with sable bristles. This number 7 and number 3. One is for larger, one is for smaller lines. Those do like 90% of my painting. Then there's Princeton brushes. This one I use for backgrounds. They're very soft. This is Princeton Neptune Square Wash. Since the reference photo has a shirt with stripes, I'm probably gonna use that square wash brush for these kind of brushes. They come in handy. Then other group of brushes that I paint with, but also use for specific stuff, is calligraphy brushes. Those are inexpensive brushes. You can get them almost anywhere, like in any art supplies shop. Sometimes even stationery has calligraphy brushes. This is actually a higher quality one with sable bristles, and I use for larger washes. These two also are not bad. They're a great alternative to these brushes, but today mostly I will be using them for doing some textures in the hair. And these are also from Princeton. These are Aqua Elite brushes. One is round and one is stroke. These have sturdier bristles. I just use them to clean some of the areas of the paper in case that pigment runs where it should not have. Then this can be very helpful for corrections, let's say. You don't have to have all of these brushes to create this portrait. If you have either a limited budget or you have something similar at home, you could do with one larger and one smaller round brush. If you have one softer flat brush, that could come in handy for this portrait. Rest, you don't have to worry so much. The textures are easier with calligraphy brushes, but they can be done with round brushes as well. Then there are paints, and paints I will be pouring onto my porcelain palettes. Some of the paints are experimenting with today, and not every color that I've picked for today's painting I use regularly, but we're going to be using three main brands that I use and mix them up. One is Schminky Horadam, the other one is Winsor & Newton, and the third one is Daniel Smith. Either brand of paints you use is fine. They have all very high quality pigments in the paints. They're easy to mix. They work fantastic. So I have cadmium yellow here. I have cadmium free red. I have permanent carmine. You can also use alizarin crimson, but I wanted something that's a bit more rougey and pops, so I opted out for permanent carmine. Then there's my bloodstone genuine, which I'm addicted to. I use in my backgrounds a lot, but I also use it for darkening some of the parts, like in the hair. Maybe we will also use it for the shirt. Cobalt blue is one of the staples that I use for mixing skin tones. And then one last color that I have today is cobalt turquoise. I ordered it by accident because I thought I'm going for the PG50 pigment that gives me a little bit different opaque color, but this cobalt turquoise is very different, but it beautifully granulates, and I just want to experiment with it. I checked the combination of the cobalt turquoise with permanent carmine, and I'm gonna show you there's gonna be a beautiful like duochrome wash that's happening with these two. You can use whatever you have that is at least a bit similar. Cobalt blue and cadmium red, they are staples. If you want to do portraits, these two are great to have for mixing. I use cadmium free orange, but I substituted for yellow today. It's not a big deal. I tried the mixes, they work just fine. And carmine, you can use magenta, you can use quinacridone red, you can use primary red, alizarin crimson, or madder lake. Any one of those similar pigments will work. And if you don't have bloodstone, which granulates, this a dark granulating color, you can use Mars Black, or you can even use neutral tint or Payne's Gray as a substitution. It won't granulate, but it's gonna at least give you the darkness that we need for contrast in this painting. If you'd like to paint along with this video, you can download the materials list, reference photo, color mixing chart, and other resources for free on my Patreon. There is an open post linked down below. You do not need a paid membership to access this. And with all of this prepared, once you set up your table, we can get started. Before we start sketching to the watercolor paper that's quite sizable, I would like to do a drawing warm-up, which is basically just trying if the sketch is going to work, and we will do that quickly, freehand. I'm gonna work in my sketchbook, just going to use that face as a guide. When you're starting to learn how to draw and you fixate on getting the likeness right, you will never be drawing. You will just get so frustrated in the first years. You want to draw as many portraits as possible without trying to go for a likeness, but instead going for for a believable human head. I see that with lots of students and members, for example, submit the artworks into my classes. They always comment something like, I'm quite happy with the portrait, but I did not get the likeness, so I don't think it's good. And many of those portraits, they have something special, like even if proportions are off, that artwork can be really, really interesting and have a tremendous value. So let's not fixate on the likeness. Plus, I'm not the person who can draw 100%. I always mess up my references. It's very hard for me to draw my friends. I want to draw a believable human head. I do have a full tutorial on how to draw a human face. It's called Gentle Guide to Drawing Faces. I will link it for you down below. I have it here on my YouTube channel, but in case that you missed that one, I'm going to do a quick proportion overview for you. So I will first draw a circle that will represent that part of the human head. Let me help myself with this one. This part of the human head, the part that carries our brain, it is not exactly a circle, but it can appear as a circle that's flattened on the side. So we're gonna have to flatten it here. But genuinely, when you're starting your drawing, you can use a circle to represent this part. And then we have to draw a central line to represent the axis of the face. But in this case, it is not 100% in the middle because there's an angle to this face. So we kind of have to pay attention to how much is this side compared to how much is this side. Even though we're not exactly precise, and I'll just eyeball it, I would say here is the center line. So here is the top of the head, and here we will mark the hairline. This is the part where the hair starts to grow. You can see the hairline is visible on people most of the time. So we already have something on the page. We don't know how long is this, but we have the hairline, we have this part mapped out, and we'll have to do some cutting of this part. Stick with me for a little bit. Let's do a quick overview. Usually the entire face, it has a hairline, and this part of the face, how long the face is being divided into 3/3. So first one is forehead, the other one goes from the eyebrows here to the nose. Here is the second one, and the third one is from the bottom of the nose to the chin. So these 3/3, let's mark them here. The other third will be here. That is somewhere here. The other third will be somewhere here. And the other third will be somewhere here. Where they're not exactly equal. This is not right. This is going to be slightly... You still following me? Okay. What I noticed in this particular portrait, this hairline is slightly smaller than it's supposed to be in ideal conditions. Third of the face appears slightly larger. So I did another YouTube video about mastering angles of the head. So you can check that one if you want to see how proportions work when the face is tilted slightly. But in this case, you just have to either eyeball it or you have to measure it. But to me, it seems that the hairline is slightly shorter. The proportions, they're never set in stone. You always have to adjust to your reference. So we will draw these points. We drew the hairline. From here, I can just add these parts of the hair and her hair here. I can even give it some lines so that you can see what I'm drawing. Then here we mapped out is going to be the brows. And then here is going to be the nose. Nose is so helpful to draw quite early on because it's just such a large structure right in the middle of the face, which helps you position eyes better. And then there's going to be the mouth. The mouth usually can be found when you take this bottom third, so between the nose and the chin, and you split it in thirds again. Here in the upper one, this line, here is going to be the mark the lips into the bottom one and the top one. And then you just draw upper lip, and then you draw the lower lip. See, we have lips, we have nose, we have brows. We still need to position the eyes. And the eyes, my friends, usually are when you grab the entire distance from the top of the face to the chin and you split it in two. That's where you get the eye line. So the eyes, also try to draw these by using as many straight lines as possible. Another one here. And some lashes. There's folds underneath the eyes. Just map where the eyes would sit. And then what's left is just to do this silhouette of the face. Here is the cheek. It might not look like her exactly, but we said we're not gonna get bothered by that. There's another thing is to position the ear, and that one usually sits in the middle third, so in between the brows and the nose. So somewhere in here, since there is a tilt, there's going to be slight, like here and here, these lines will not be straight. The ear will be slightly smaller in perspective than it is here at the front of the face. So that's gonna be the ear. Position it lightly. There's the neck. Now I just draw how I see it on the reference photo. And there we have the face. Maybe we'll correct this line after all to have it a slightly nicer, but we'll have to soon be able to draw this on the watercolor paper, and then we can start coloring it. Here are the main points that you have to remember and will help you to remember when we are drawing on a large watercolor piece of paper. The face can be divided into thirds. This entire part where you define the point that starts the hairline, this to the chin, it can be divided into three parts. If the face is looked upon from the front, usually the three parts are equal, but they don't have to be, you have to measure. So the second and the third are relatively equal, but the upper one appears to be slightly shorter. We mentioned the factors that can cause this. Then the bottom third of the face that can be also divided into three parts, which means that this upper line will make the mark that splits the lips. Over here, this bottom one usually is where this shadow underneath the bottom lip, you can see it here. See, this is the shadow part, and here is the line where the chin again starts to be in the light. And then how to find the eyes is to grab the entire distance from the top of the head to the chin and divide it into two. And usually you can find the eye line, and that's about it. If we transfer these simple measurements into our paper and connect these marks, then we will get at least a decent human head. It might not look exactly like the reference photo, but it will look like a head. Let's try to do this. And now after the drawing warm-up, we can finally start sketching on a watercolor paper. So we essentially want to do the same thing that we did in our sketchbook, but with a bit more care. And the first thing that I will do is to map out where the entire head will end, and maybe do a circle, and then draw the axis. We can even like measure this. Where this, so chin of the model is going to end up here. From chin to the top of the head is going to be here. So you can do this, the simple measurements, at least to establish like basic proportions. You can use them in case that you have the reference photo printed out at about the same size that you will be painting. If not, then you have to eyeball this. It's not so hard because we said we do not have to be 100% precise. Here I have the length of the face, and now we can divide into thirds. Like here is going to be eyebrows. It's not going to be exactly the third, but these two we need to split in half. So here is going to be the nose. I'm just lightly going to sketch it. If you want, you can measure how wide the nose is. I'm just going to eyeball this. Here is going to be the cheeks. Let's do the eyebrows. The eyebrows are going to sit here. I'm not gonna correct. I just want to establish. And here, 1/3, the other third, So somewhere in here needs to be middle line of the mouth. We can also measure how far the final line is from the nose, and it is here. So that means that the brows will only be until this point. The eyes will be hardest, possibly, but you just have to do the measuring. So this entire line from top to bottom, and then you have to approximately find half. Somewhere in here is gonna be the eye line. And what I also do is on the reference photo, I try to do straight lines. You can do straight lines with a ruler or with freehand or with a piece of paper or something. I just want to see what kind of things line up with what. So the corner of the nose, it doesn't exactly line up with the corner of this eye. You can see there's a small gap, but here on the other side, they line up. And that is because of the angle of the face. So you have to pay attention to these things. So here it doesn't line up, but here it lines up. Usually I just do this freehand, but it's better visible when you cover it with something or use a smaller ruler. You can try to find something that works for you. So here, when I do straight line also, I now know that there's gonna be a gap here. So the eye will start here. And here, when I do straight line, here is where I know that the eye is going to be. If I'm confused, I can even measure how wide the eye is, approximately this wide. So here is going to be this beautiful thing. Here's the cheek. We can get rid of the guidelines so that we can start seeing the face. Then I add the hair. Here I add the ear. The ear, we said, is going to be sitting from the brows to the nose, so in this area, but it's not going to be that tall. I can measure this part. Yeah, it's approximately here. And then we have to find the way the hair splits. There's gonna be like one part of the hair here. The hairstyle actually goes slightly higher than what we originally set here as the top of the head, because top of the head means usually skull, but the hair goes slightly higher. So you can just go 2 millimeters more from the original mark. Here I just try to mark some like the flow of the hair. Here is the neck. For me, it's also important to know if I run a straight line here, this is going to be the point where the neck kind of shifts direction. This needs some more smoother transition, but just pay attention to what lines up with what and you'll be good. There's definitely a mistake in there somewhere. I already can see the mouth is too low. I will fix later, but I just want to place everything on the page before I do any fixes. And then this is basically how tall the shirt is. Now it's time. We have all of the proportions mapped out roughly, so you can go around the sketch with a kneaded eraser and soften it, get rid of your sketch lines, and we need to refine the sketch still, but I do think there's a mistake in here somewhere. So nose is usually what I try to have properly set up. So if this is my nose position, everything else has to work out from there. From my nose to the top of the head, yes, that works out. From the nose to the bottom of the head, yes, that works out. Now, nose from the mid part of the mouth. Yeah, it works out. Where's the mistake? I don't know yet, but I will show you some tricks that I have. Besides going for a coffee, because that one helps a lot, you can come back in 30 minutes and look at it from fresh perspective. Usually you can see these mistakes right away. Just the shape of the lips is slightly different. Probably I'm not getting the face expression, but I'm not going to be obsessive about it. If it works out, then fine. If not, we're going to paint as it is. Okay. Part of the refining process usually is that you will make the sketch and final look of your potentially painting. I think there's a lot that's beautiful about it. So this is why I don't obsess over getting the likeness exactly like the reference photo, because today everybody just traces the reference photos. All of the watercolor paintings then can look the same, like just some sort of colored version of a photo. And that is not what we are going for. So if you sketch and you spend that extra time with every sketch before you go and do a watercolor painting, that's just such a huge plus. You might not realize it at first because that's really a lot of work and some extra time, but it will pay off because you will develop your own, basically a handwriting for the way that you sketch the portrait. What you see as faulty at the start, when you don't see like 100% correlation with the reference photo, it's not faulty. This is something new that's happening, and that is eventually an artistic expression. It is really painful process for me, even after so many years. After I spent that time with my drawing and I do the workout, I do some sketches in watercolor, then I feel really pumped to do a watercolor painting. Being warmed up like that, I don't mess up as often as I did without the warm-up, but that's just planning and getting used to the reference photo. For me, it's worth every single hour that I spent. But of course, some of you might just want to try and not feel confident with drawing yet, or some of you might not have enough time. For those of you in that Patreon open post that I mentioned, also my sketch will be attached there, so you can grab it. I just want to explain why I do all of this and why I think it's worth it, and you can do whatever works for you long term. I did mention in my previous drawing videos here on YouTube that I do regret that I did not spend more time with drawing, because it really is a foundational skill. I then had to pay for it because not everything can be pulled off with just beautiful colors and like watercolor effects. That's the fun part. We have to earn it. Now the eyes. Okay, still have some smudges going on. And I picked this portrait also because of the lighting, because it has strong light, so you can see clearly the difference between light, mid-tone and shadow. We will not have to work so hard to get the 3D effect, because that kind of light is best and easiest to paint. I don't know what's wrong with it right now, and you will never find out unless you take a break. So go take a break. I will have some errands to run anyway, but when I get back to the studio, I will carefully observe the difference. It should be more obvious to me than it is now when I've been looking at this paper for 20 minutes. Then show you my methods of uncovering the problematic parts, if there are any, which there always are. And then once we have prepared sketch as thoughtfully and thoroughly as we can, then it's time to start painting. Playing around with colors, that's going to be my favorite part. Okay, I will see you shortly. I am now done with my break and I am trying to find some mistakes in my sketch finally. So this is actually one of the tricks that I've been using lately. I just throw the sketch on the ground and compare from above. I'm not too tall of a person, but I can clearly see it much better than when it's on my table close to my face. I don't think the proportions are like terribly wrong, but some things that I am noticing, especially here in the eye, I am noticing that the eye, the way I drew them, they produce a different facial expression. So I need to hide the iris here, make it smaller, but make the eye here, up here, a little bit more round, and the same over here. So the eyes are not the same expression as here. And for the mouth, this is pretty calm. This is very little expression. But in order to get this smirk on her face, that I think is very cute, I think I need to work in this area. So I might need to work around here and add some of this shadow. Basically suggests that the muscles here are working something. I don't know, like around nose, I think we're pretty good. I don't see many problems around the hair. Yeah, I think these two things, which are kind of important for the face, and yeah, maybe slightly adjust the chin, even though the way this face looks. I don't know about the chin, but definitely the eyes and the mouth. I'm going to go put it back on my table and fix it. And I mentioned this corner of the mouth, so maybe I need to lift. Oh, now we're getting smirk a little bit. Okay, now I feel like she has some sort of expression, and that was just very little work. And adjusting the chin slightly. And I think, guys, we might be ready to start painting. So I know that the drawing part, like I mentioned, is sometimes dreadful, also long, tedious, and really not fun. At least when you're starting out, it's not so much fun. But so worth it to try with every single portrait. Let's do the fun part. Let's get the paints out. Now I want to introduce you to all of the colors that I want to use for the demo, and I want to show you how to mix them together, what kind of mixes I'm hoping for in this painting, and how I think that the color combination is going to be interesting. It's going to be very different from the reference photo. So here are all of the colors that I want to use for this demo. For basic skin tones, I'm going to use yellow, then red. Also, this is a basic red. We're going to be using it for shadow mixes, but I need something more bright also to have a different kind of red, a cooler red that's gonna help me get more depth. And for that, I'm using the permanent carmine from Schminky Horadam. This is Bloodstone Genuine. I talked about it. You've seen me maybe use it in many of my demos. That's granulating dark paint. That one usually I have in a separate porcelain bowl, small bowl, just because that one is mostly for the backgrounds. Keep it away from all of the other paints. And on a separate plate, I'm gonna push the cobalt turquoise and the cobalt blue. So just very briefly, I'm going to show you how the mixes will work. Some colors won't mix that much, but some will be the basis. I already did a mixing guide that's available on my YouTube channel. That one I will also link down below. That's like a general mixing guide for skin tones with limited palette. This one I'm using today is alternative to what I explained there. For basic skin tone, I will use this yellow and red. We'll mix them together, maybe add a bit more pigment, and that will give us some sort of orangey skin tone. You can dilute it, you can add more red, something like this. If you dilute more, you will get more transparent mix. If you add too much pigment and forget to dilute, then you will end up with something way too intense to be a good portrait color. So you have to dilute. For the skin tone, you always have to dilute. If you add the third color, the cool color, which is carmine, if you add it into the skin tone, the skin will be a bit more rougey. We can add that for the cheeks, for the surrounding area of the eyes, also sometimes for the mouth, for the lips is very suitable to add. Now for the shadow color, we will use red, not carmine. You have to use the cadmium red and cobalt blue. Cobalt blue. Mix them together and you will get the color that is great for shading, something like this. Again, if you add more blue, you will end up with something cooler, darker, sometimes even looking like this. I'm not sure if we are gonna need that, maybe. Also, the mixture can be thick also sometimes. Sometimes we need a thick shading mixture, but we almost never need a thick skin tone. So for skin tone, always dilute. For shading, you can dilute, but also use a thick, which means that a little water and just mix the two and get the consistency that is like this. The consistency that can create details. The more blue you add into the mixture, the darker the mix will be, and that's how you can paint details. Besides skin tone, we need the stylization colors. I call it stylization because that's the way I envision the portrait. I envisioned this one to support the expression, and so I want it colorful. So I picked this cobalt turquoise, which granulates beautifully. And I want to work a bit more with clean carmine. And if you mix these two together on a page, and I don't think I've talked about this in my other tutorials yet, but when you let the colors mingle, first of all, they create violet, but they also start to separate. And that is because one pigment granulates and the other is smooth. Red pigments usually are very smooth, but some of the blue and green pigments, they granulate beautifully. And if you mix one of the ones that granulate with one of the ones that are smooth, they start to do this duochromatic effect. You will see it in a minute. But they kind of, even if they are mixed together, when you leave them in the watery wash, they start to fall apart. And that creates a beautiful texture that looks like there's two colors on the page, together but not together. Look at this. It will become more visible after this sits on the page for a little bit. Even if the two colors don't create a special effect, they go wonderfully together. So magenta is going to be my hero color and the cobalt turquoise as well. And we will be painting the stripes on her shirt. I want to do that with something darker. So I might mix the cobalt blue with bloodstone. Create some more room here. So this is cobalt blue with bloodstone that will make it a little bit darker. Maybe add a bit of the cobalt turquoise. I'll see how that goes, but yeah, maybe it's going to be darker green color, something like that. And what are the other mixes? We will need brown for the hair, and for that we'll mix red and yellow and add a bit of bloodstone in it. With creating browns, it's not so hard, but you have to visually judge the type of brown that you're getting, because you're either getting brown that's yellowish or brown that's reddish. This one is yellowish. It's too much yellow in the mixture. So I need to add more red and swatch. Now this is a reddish kind of brown. I'm gonna add a bit more red here, maybe a bit more carmine, which is also red. That one is a bit more rougey. And if I want it darker than this, I'm gonna add bloodstone and just darken it up. See how many types of brown, earthy color I'm getting. And because of the bloodstone, it creates some granulation in the mixture, which is, I think it's awesome for the hair. Here we have the skin tone mixture, the shading mixture, the stylization colors that I want to use for the background, something for her shirt and something for her hair. I think this is pretty wide palette to use because we are not working with 3 but with 6 colors, and the amount of combination is incredible. I just want to always be mindful about using some smooth pigments in my palettes and some that granulate, because the granulation adds some extra visual interest to a watercolor painting that's otherwise very flat. So I think we've got this covered. If you paint along with this demo, I urge you to try to do these mixes with your own paints. Try to find out if you have something that looks like a skin tone, if you have something that looks like darker, either blue or green for the shirt, if you can mix the browns successfully so that you don't have to figure it out once we are painting. I find it extremely difficult when my wash is wet trying to figure out what color I'm going to be using. I always prepare this beforehand. And now when everything is ready, I will set up my table and let's get painting. When it comes to my painting setup, I always have a paper in front of me, which is obvious, but I also have paper towels and this sponge for painting on my right hand side because I'm right-handed. If you are left-handed, you have to do it the other way around. I have my brushes somewhere where I can reach them easily, and my palette. Today it consists of these plates. I have it also on my right hand side. The jars of water, all is here within the reach so that I don't have to run around the studio looking for stuff. Tubes of paint are also within reach, but like so they don't bother me too much during painting process, because I tend to run out of paint if I squeeze too little, that I can quickly get more paint. And then one very important thing, and that's something to level up here, your paper or pad or whatever is the surface that you're painting on. We need to get some sort of tilt there so that the water can run down as we paint. That's important, especially when painting first layer. It's not like it really bothers me when I have too many blooms on my face. There's a way to fix it, but it's just the washes are more transparent and a little bit more predictable if you let the water run and connect the wash. So usually I just use this basket for this to create this tilt here. Or if you check this from the side of the table, this is what the tilt looks like. It is not too steep, see, but the water can now run from here to here. I also need to have my reference at the ready. Is here, you might not be able to see it because I have to put it a little bit away so that I accidentally don't get water and paint on it. But you can go to that Patreon article that I linked for you down below. You can download the reference, you can print it, you can have it on your phone, also separately away from the video. This watercolor sponge, it is to basically help me get rid of the excess water from my paintbrush. And that's so important so that you don't load too much water there. But it is solid when you are not using it, but you need to put it inside the water jar for a little bit and then press it to get rid of excess water. And in a state like this, she's ready to help me out. So I'll start with the skin tone. I'll prepare the skin tone here. Already discussed with you how to mix one. It's red, it's yellow, and it's water. Let's do it a little bit differently. I'm going to use the Princeton Neptune Square Wash, and I'm going to sort of like pre-wet the skin area. So all of the paper is going to be slightly damp. Now that will kind of help me to spread the placed color a little bit, especially inside the face. So now when I load my brush, I need to get rid of excess paint slightly. I can do it here, but I can also do it with the sponge. It's just out of reach right now. And we can slowly start placing the paint here. And we need to place the paint basically everywhere where I do not see absolute white area. So the light is coming from here. Here there's going to be lighter area, but not completely light. Here I think we need more paint around the eyes, a bit more, here a bit more. Need to be quick. This is just a very light pass of paint, the initial wash. So you don't have to be too worried, because anything that you make here, it can be refined later. I want to preserve these areas here, here, here. In these areas we've got a little bit lighter part that we do not want to place our paint there. And here and I want to use a bit more carmine. I need to make this wet, 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 like really wet. Kind of want to do for the hair, just pre-wet this a bit more. I'm always surprised when I do this like method where I first dampen my page, that it is incredible how fast it dries. It's dry almost instantly. I want to prepare my brown from yellow, red, and a bit of bloodstone. I want to prepare it just add some basic color in there into the wet wash. More bloodstone, darker paint even here, and a little bit here. So even here they have darker areas, lighter areas, and we have to pay attention to them when we are painting or drawing something. Here on this reference photo, what I'm noticing is this is dark area. Here is mid-tone, mid-tone, light. So this is where I'm placing the darks, here in the middle of that wash. We already have done quite a lot of work there. This is a dry. This was just a way to separate the white from very light skin tone, but this is already dry. I can't go back. You have to do it pretty quickly. So that is why it's essential to have all of the tools ready, because when this is semi-dry or dry, you no longer can go there with your brush. You have to dry everything. You can pre-wet everything again. That won't interfere with the previous layer if you don't have too much pigment, and then you can add more if you did not make all of it. At this stage I have to kind of stop to work on the face. I could make sure that it is really dry, and I could quickly use hair dryer for this area, and then we might start doing some background. So now that the first layer is dry, I am going to do the background. So for this is the only case where I get rid of my basket and I don't do tilts. I just lay my watercolor pad flat on the table and I will try to use a lot of water, some colors to mingle. While I was taking a break, some of my paints, they got a bit dry, so I have to re-wet them, kind of reactivate them. Also, the bloodstone I need to prepare, and the carmine. And a little bit of the yellow. I think I wanted to use yellow to add some colorful pops. So how we will do this? The way I do backgrounds is purely just intuitive play of color, but it has some sort of rules. One rule is not to touch the face all that much. So maybe we could keep the face dry for now. Yeah, we can work with large calligraphy brush. First of all, I think I'm gonna start with the the color that is warm and not so dark, and that's going to be the carmine. It can't touch the face here. Can touch the hair a little bit if we want to. And we can pre-wet the shirt area as well. I use large pools of water and color like this to make the water flow. And at this point, and I'm not sure how long will I be able to explain what I'm doing, because I kind of have to watch the paint, not going completely crazy, and at the same time adding color to sort of have some sort of balance. I add some yellows. Here I sort of like if the yellow goes here to the skin where there's light area, I don't mind it. Here. It is very light color, and plus it can be warm, like this warm tint is okay when used for the light areas. And now I get rid of all of these excessive pulls of, maybe in a bit I can let the water flow again. So I'm getting my basket and I let the water flow down from here. If the face is dry, then all of the color will move around it, will not go through it if you didn't leave here a large pool of water and paint. Okay, now I start adding the now I will start adding the green. Got rid of the excess. I will level it up again, and there's cobalt turquoise, just tiny bits. Now hopefully this works. It might not. We might have to start again. If that doesn't work out, we'll see. Maybe I want to go in with a little bit of yellow and a little bit of the carmine to do some splatters inside that cobalt wash. I'm adding bloodstone, but like I'm being extra careful because I don't want to have all these like super dark, but I still want to add hints of it. Okay, this is absolutely crazy, but try to resist the urge to move the paint too much, try to fix it. The only thing that I do is getting rid of the excess. Sometimes I feel like in a certain area, all of the colors mingle together and I can't see the individual colors or details. That's when I maybe do some splatters and add color, but I try not to touch as much. Here, for example, you can clearly see that this is yellow, this is red, there's bloodstone, there's cobalt, and that's how it's supposed to be. The moment you start interfering with it, it all gets mingled up and messed up. For nice textures, place the color quickly. I know that it's incredibly hard to leave it as it is because it looks so messy, but ends up looking completely different when it dries. It will not look like this. It will be softer. The color transitions will look differently, and it's not all bad. So I very carefully I lift it like this, and I let the excess water just finish descending. I even like this very soft blooms on her neck. It's fine. We can leave that as part of the stylization. Maybe while the bottom is still wet, maybe we could do the shirt. But I would not do it when the wash here is completely soaked. We'll wait 2 minutes, but in the meantime, I would prepare my paint. So the color that I want to use, I definitely want to use the flat brush from Princeton, this Princeton Neptune. Not too thick, but it allows me to create the stripes. And I'm going to use bloodstone with the green cobalt. We need to make it thicker. The mixture needs to be thickened up because we already have water here. And so I need to just draw it in. So here, I'm just following the reference. And I need to make the line thinner and thicker in some areas so that it is not universal everywhere. Here might be a little bit darker, and here as well. Okay, that is done. We are not gonna touch the bottom part anymore, I don't think. It's okay the way it is. Now I can leave it dry completely. Without this being dry, I can't move to another layer. When it's dry, we're gonna address the shadows of the face, and then finally the details and just all of the touch-ups that the painting will still need. But I need to take a small break until everything is nice and dry. Now I have dried everything, so we can keep on working. Let's get to the painful parts. So I was thinking about how to do the shadows, but sometimes I work on a dry paper. However, I wet the entire face and work similarly to how we did it the first layer. And I think for this type of reference where everything is so soft and diffused, there is no harsh edges in these shadows, I think we can pre-wet the entire face and try to do the soft version again. For that, I will use more or less clean water, and I will, everything maybe except the eyes, I will put water here. Just like before we kept the face dry, you now keep the background dry, so do not go with the clean brush, clean water on your brush, do not go over the border of the face here. And when it comes to the pre-wetting, we can't do it just one time. You have to do it in a way that paper kind of soaks in all of the wetness. So I always use tons of water, and I wait a bit. Even the neck we need to sort of pre-wet. And then afterwards, I kind of go over with clean water again, and then the paper is soaked in a way that it lasts for at least a little bit. So I am kind of avoiding the inner parts of the eyes now, but I'm just soaking everything else with clean water. Now remember the brushes that I introduced to you before? Those are the Princeton Aqua Elite. This is a flat brush, and it has sturdy bristles. So sometimes, like in this area where I have a little bit of that yellow going in the face, this type of brush helps me clean it up nicely, so there's basically no paint left where it's not supposed to go. While this is still soaking in some water, I will grab the smaller Winsor & Newton brush. We'll make the mixture for shading, but we'll also, I think, need some carmine. So here is just red and blue. So the shading mixture that we use will be something in the middle, maybe more on the red side, is what I see on the reference photo, but we do not dilute so much. Why? Because we are painting wet in wet, and in the wet surface the paint spreads so much, so we used thicker paint when the surface is wet, and we can dilute more if we paint wet on dry. But we do also need a larger brush still with a bit of carmine, like for the cheeks. So I'm going to prepare that as well. Just diluted carmine. I'm gonna start gently. You need a soft brush for this, but just gently add the carmine to the cheeks. Like that. Here I can, with just damp brush, I can get rid of the excess if I want to here as well, to make it blend better. Well, I do see some of the redness around the eyes, so I'm gonna just put it there because I see it there. I think somewhere I should also have pre-mixed the basic skin tone. Not too dark, but I think I want to still go in here and make the skin tone color a little bit more profound here in this area. The tilt here is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, the pre-wet Wet surface could form blooms, so make sure that you have it all tilted, that you have at least small tilt. Here I think I'm going to use a little bit of the cobalt blue, and I might just add some small, just a tiny wash of it here on this side of the face. And I'm doing this because this is the side, basically side plane of the face here. So it seems like the cool color should suggest that form a little bit better. I think that helps with perception. Okay, now the small brush and the thicker shading mixture that I created here, a little bit more red. Seems to me pretty blue still. Just a bit more red, even a bit more red. Yeah, like that. And more red here. When you work wet on wet, it is never the way it appears when you first place it. Here we don't want the paint to go, so I can clean it up. And here I want the paint to kind of spread. Right. So I can shade a little bit here, below the nose. It looks like a bit harsh, but we have to work out all of these tone values. Now we're gonna be working a bit more with the red here. And a little bit more carmine. Now, since I know that the paint runs, so it always goes beyond where I place it, I try to place it more in the middle of the mouth and do not go here to the edge, so that would not spread too far. Not every time it works, but just keep on trying. Some of these details we'll have to do on dry later. I'm just trying to do what I can here while this is wet. And if I place too much paint, I just scrub it off with this. Here, I think the tip of the nose still needs like a slight bit of color. Here and here it is. It is incredible how fast this dried. Like I put tons of water and I work for 5 minutes and it's dry. That's fine. I'm gonna work on dry. I'm not gonna fight the wet in wet. Still, I just wanted to do at least something around the eyes. At least a little bit. And I would like to put some color to the eyes. Here to just make the iris dark. And put a bit of yellow inside the bottom part. Make the iris slightly lighter here at the, it makes you perceive this, like, how do I say it? The bottom part is the part that gets more light, makes the eye look more alive when that part gets lighter. So if you can keep it lighter, that would be terrific. I can't do anything anymore. First of all, my paper is slightly buckled up here, so that's very hard for me to work. Maybe we'll still have to do this, however. I don't think that's the best way to work here, but still, here at the neck there's shadow that's very tricky, so I'll have to wet it again. Hopefully that works. Here. I'm going to try to at least there get the shadow right. Red and blue. More red. A little bit of blue. With a little bit of carmine as well. Here. But now I kept this part dry. I tried, at least. Here, maybe we could use a little bit more of that yellow. Here on the neck, I can afford to be a bit more expressive, intuitive even, or at least that's how I feel about this. The values need to be correct, and so here there's shadow, so I'll try to make it clear that this is the shadowy part, and the rest maybe I add a bit more of that yellow here. All right, let me try this very quick. So now the final stage, and that's details, adjustments, lots to do in the face. I do not want to overwork the painting, however, I want more definition. This is not very clear. What was kind of bothering me as I was trying to watch the painting dry is this corner, there's an edge. This is yellow and very light skin tone, so I want to pull a bit of the green, maybe a little bit of the bloodstone here into this corner. It is not necessary to do this always. It's just something that I want to try. Maybe that will not look so great, but I think it will give the face some more definition. Just a quick note, if you'd like more tutorials like this one, you can join my Patreon, either for free or as a member of my Masterclass studio tier that gives you access to over 100 real-time demos you can paint along with, including portraits, drawing workouts, watercolor exercises, full challenges, nature paintings, and even artist resources like how to make prints or get started on social media. You will also get access to our private member chats where you can share your work work and get feedback from me and others in the community. And if you're short on time, you can also purchase specific lesson collections in my Patreon shop with lifetime access. The link's in the description if you'd like to check it out. Now I'm working wet on dry, so new paint on a dry surface so that I have this edge nice and clear here. So maybe do something similar on the other side as well, a little bit. And here around the hair and the ear, just to make these pop. I just like dark backgrounds, I can't help it. If you feel like your own painting that you're trying to hopefully do alongside this video, if you feel like that lighter layer suited it better, then just don't do the same like I am. You don't have to add more layers there. Just observe and correct to your own taste. But I don't think this is bad. And I ran out of bloodstone. And now I dry. I now want to clean up this edge a little bit, just with clean damp brush, just with clean water on it. I just want to soften this transition. Should maybe be just a tiny bit of skin tone here. All right, now let's do some work in the face, maybe with smaller brush. Red and blue, and this is the mixture. So we want to shade around the eyes and do some more depth there. And just want to go here with thicker pigment. Do not let it run. And we're working on a dry paper. I just place the color for shading, then just rinse my brush in clean water, get rid of the excess, which is very important, and then you can gently spread the paint on the page. You can just spread it like that. And I want to do here a little bit. And this is not the eyebrows, this is the shadow underneath. Want to prepare these for the eyebrows. And this one, I thought it was already dark before when we were painting it wet in wet, but it's not. it dries and then it gets light. You have to kind of correct. When painting the eyes, there are shadows around the eyes, always in specific areas. So here, this corner of the eye, for example, that's one side, and the other side, that's the one that almost always gets most of the darkness. And then you have to place just clean water here so that the edge spreads towards the nose area, and here. This area is also lighter. That one is lighter, and here is a bit of shadow again. That shadow that I'm placing here is not the same as here in the corner. This one is more diluted paint because it's much lighter. And this area usually that gets pretty light here. And here as well is light. Maybe here actually is a bit more. It's a bit more shadow. And then underneath the eye, like here, there's like this fold that gets darker. Here as well is pretty dominant, especially when you have draw. It's not like she's got these circles underneath the eyes. It's the lighting. Lighting is so dramatic and strong that it makes these very prominent. Here as well. Here as well a bit more. So you have to pay attention to the reference photo and just carefully add those shadow. Like this is, I know this is one of the boring parts where you have to concentrate. It's not like splashing colors everywhere like when we were doing the background, but it has to be done, especially with portraits. So, and a little bit of the red here. I try to exaggerate the red, add a bit more carmine, because that's how I connect that with the background. And also I see it on the reference photos, very dramatic light. And then here around the, like underneath the eyebrows, we need to prepare that. There's the shadow. I would like to do more with the nose. And for the nose, we have skin tone base, maybe a bit darker, but this part of the nose needs to be more dark than this part. And also there's like shadow goes like this. This is an exaggeration. Now I have to soften the edges with the dampened brush. Just rub it. If you have too much water on your brush, that's gonna make cauliflowers or bloom effects. It's not gonna look so nice. So make sure that the brush only is damp, it's not too wet. And sometimes I make a mess and just make maps, then trying to fix it like here is happening. But that's fine. You can try to fix it. Sometimes I make it worse. Sometimes I just grab my hair dryer and try to dry this quickly before that happens. Also, we need to go inside the eyes and do them with a bit of carmine and blue. So essentially it's like darker purpley color, but also with the regular mixture for shading. This is just the red and blue. Kind of have to do this here. And also here. And now with just clean water, try to spread the paint. a little bit more contrast and definition for the eyes. So while this is drying, we need to add the lashes and the eyebrows later on. But while that is drying, we can move towards the nose and the mouth. So here I think I need to be a bit more dark. Maybe here still. Place the paint and then try to spread it. And here as well. I know that it looks probably very red on the camera, but the moment we dry this, it's gonna be very fade. Mouth is might be a bit more work. Oh, I just feel like fixing this one part of the nose here. So the mouth, we need to pay close attention to where the light and the shadow is. So here there's a light, and here there are details like marks. I find this part a little bit more earth tone, and the bottom part a little bit more rougey, like with alizarin crimson or the carmine that we are using. So I just try to replicate what I see on the reference. Here I'm going to be using a little bit more of the red with blue here in the mid part and this part. And here at the bottom I try to do this. Maybe spread with water a little bit, but just keep these parts white or white. There's no white anymore. And maybe that's good to keep like this. Here, maybe emphasize a shadow a little bit. I feel we're getting closer finally. Maybe here a bit emphasis. And there's shadow on the chin that I totally neglected. And that one is here. And here with clean water, I touch it, dilute. I'm getting sloppy. When I see the finish line, sometimes I get sloppy. Just doing things too fast without care that's absolutely essential until the end. And here maybe just emphasize this part. And also we forgot about the ear. So I'm gonna try to do this here. The inner part, this has some contrast. This gets pretty dark. But other than this, I do not really need to work on the ear all that much. Maybe a bit more of the red. Okay, I will dry. I wanted to include this like beauty mark, those on the face. Why shouldn't we include it? But maybe diffuse the edge a little bit so that it's not too sharp. And now let's do the brows, the lashes. Here's the calligraphy brush. I will make it a little bit damp and will mix with some of the brown paint that I pre-mixed here. It doesn't have to be too dark. And we keep the brush spread like this. And I'll try to see if that helps me create some nice texture, or if I need to grab smaller one. This is too far, so I just clean this. And here I feel like I went a bit too far, so I clean again. Maybe here too. For the lashes, I do similar thing. I just stamp on the brush here. But I do sometimes have to clean up the insides if I go too far, like this. Just damp, soft brush will clean it up. And that looks, and I think looks good enough. Maybe some corrections with that tiny brush that we have for details, just some small adjustments. Just try to darken this part a little bit. So maybe we could also do like she has makeup and there's like this darker line here that I might try to emphasize. Yes, because I like it. But it's also part of the reference photo. Good. The only thing that I need left is to do something with the hair. The hair only was done in the first layer, so we need some adjustments. Again, when painting hair, I will try to follow the direction of the hair. So, for example, here I see the darker inside, so I'm going to paint it like that. With the hair, I try as little strokes with my brush as possible. So also need to emphasize this part here. Some of these floating hairs, which I might want to do with smaller brush later. And there's some that go this direction. Some even float here a little bit. And then here on the other side, it looks a bit more unfinished than on this side. So let's work here tiny bit. Also, I try to go here for the darkest parts one more time. And dark parts here as well. And the lighter part. And finish the lighter part here. And I carefully try to add the strokes of hair that belong like to the part that is her forehead. They need to be done carefully because there's such a light area here. I myself am afraid to mess it up, which can happen, but can't stop you from trying. I think they need to be a bit more on the red side. A bit more red. Here and here. I'm not sure if we should not clean this. Right, just spread a little bit. And I try again. Hopefully get better. Yeah, why not? So at this point we could add a few white details. You can either use white paint, even watercolor has white paint that can be opaque to some extent. You can also use scalpel, which is usually my first choice, and with that we can do these reflections. You can just scratch off some paint to make things lighter and to return some of the highlights into the painting. Can do here on the lips as well. And some of these tiny little hairs. The sound is horrible, I apologize. You don't have to do a lot of these. do this one thing to place a bit more contrast here. So this is the first painting that I'm signing this year, and I think this one is done finally. And that's it, your full watercolor portrait is done. I hope painting along with me helped you feel more confident with the process. If you'd like to keep practicing, I've got another real-time tutorial here on YouTube where we paint a portrait using just one color. It is a bit easier and a great way to focus on values and shading. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.